and welcome back to another reading of my book, Ticking My Way Through Life. Last time we read, which has been a little while, we read Chapter 7, Ticking My Way Through School. So this week we are going to be reading Chapter 8, The Teachers Who Made a Difference. And this week we also have a bonus guest, my little boy Scout here, who loves to lay on that bed when I'm in this room. So you might see him poke his head up and around, and might see a couple other puppy guests as well. See, there he goes. Chapter 8, The Teachers Who Made a Difference. After my diagnosis, there was a lot of statistics thrown my way about what my life would be like in and out of school. Doctors and research showed that things would most likely be pretty difficult for me throughout my schooling, and that's all it took for me to prove all those statistics wrong. I knew just because that's how it was for some, or even most students with Tourette syndrome, that was not going to be me. I promised myself from that day forward that I would be the student no one anticipated that I would be. I'm not saying it was easy, because it wasn't. I'm also not saying that I had it as bad as a lot of people with Tourette syndrome, because I also didn't. However, that didn't mean that the added stress of papers, homework, tests, and grades didn't make my Tourette's go haywire. A new school year always brought on different emotions for me. I was always excited to start school again because I was a kid that liked school growing up, at least until high school anyways. But with that excitement came anxiety about what the classroom would be like for me. I never really told a lot of people about my fears of the classroom because I didn't want anyone to worry and be concerned, but the worries were there. Do I have to tell my teachers? And if I do, will they even know what it is? Will they believe me? Will my friends finally be fed up and embarrassed about being with the girl who moved weird? Will the new students think of me as a weird girl with Tourette syndrome? All kinds of questions would swirl through my mind, which would cause the tics to go a little worse right before the school year started. All sorts of emotions would run through my body, making my tics go crazy, adding to the domino effect of my earlier stated questions about ticking in front of people in the classroom. Because of my fears of people staring or possibly making fun of me in the classroom, I always went with the approach of getting to them before they got to me. I figured if I was open and upfront about my disorder, and then if they were still going to judge or make fun of me, they were the ones with the problem and not me. So every year for as long as I could remember, anytime I had the opportunity to write about or do a project on a subject of my choosing, I would always, without hesitation, pick Tourette syndrome. I saw it as the perfect opportunity to teach my class when there were projects to present in the classroom, and my teachers about my condition. Even though my tics were subconsciously suppressed for most part of the classroom, that didn't mean they didn't find their way out, and I never wanted to be the disruptive kid in the room, so I wanted to tell everyone why my body might do things that seemed purposeful or funny. I wanted them to know I couldn't control it, no matter how much I tried. I would say that this tactic was successful about 90% of my time in school. While most teachers were perceptive and believed me when my mom or I told them about my disorder, I could always tell that they didn't really know how to handle the situation as a whole. I would always be able to tell when an adult or someone else around me either never heard of Tourette syndrome before or only ever knew it as a joke and never knew it was a real thing that affected someone's life in a very serious way. It was weird because they were the teacher, but there I was teaching them something that they knew nothing about. It made it slightly uncomfortable for me sometimes when I would have to be excused because I was ticking and needed to take a lap around the school or go lay down in the nurse's office so that I could calm down. They would always say yes, but on occasion, their faces would show more concern than was necessary. I remember one time I went to the nurse's office and just asked to sit there or lie down for a little bit because she'd never experienced that kind of illness in her life before. She called my mom not knowing what to do. I didn't blame her for her concern, but the tone of voice she had when she called was a little different, and you could tell she just had absolutely no idea what to do with me, even though I tried to explain to her that I was fine. I just needed some time to myself to calm my mind and breathe. I just needed some time where I knew there weren't eyes staring at me, wondering what I was going to do next. Although my experience in school was rather uneventful, when I think back to that time in my tics, two specific scenarios and teachers always come to mind. One in particular being my art teacher in middle school. This teacher would always have us gather around his desk when we started a new project so he could show us the right way to draw, which was always insane in my mind. I always thought there wasn't a right way to draw or make art, especially for a middle school student, but I guess not according to this teacher. On this particular day, I was a lucky student who got to stand right next to him while we were gathered around his giant, gray, perfectly square desk. I remember seeing the other students standing around me, watching as his pencil hit the gridded paper, showing us what our drawings were supposed to look like that day. I felt my best friend's arm rub up against me by accident as there was only so much room for students to stand, and that's when the tics started to happen. I'll never forget that look in his eyes as he looked up at me over his glasses, as if I was stupid or something, and said, "Can you please just sit still?" To this day, I still get that same sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach as I think back to that moment and type this story. And now while I'm reading it, I'm still that same scared little girl when I think about these moments and these memories. I can feel every ounce of embarrassment, anxiousness, and the tears that threatened to come in front of all my classmates. My best friend at the time, being as wonderful as she was, whispered to me with a worried look in her eye while asking, "Are you ticking?" And I slowly nodded my head yes as I stared down at my feet and then back at the drawing on the table. I felt her grab my arm to let me know she was there for me, a small moment that I'll never forget from her. This particular teacher didn't know that I had Tourette syndrome. It was just a teacher that we never had a chance to tell, and it was only a 9-week art class that I didn't find necessary to bring up. You would think at that moment I would have let him know about my disorder, but that look in his eye and the tone in his voice froze me. I didn't know what to say, and I thought that he would have believed me even if I told him, so why would I even try to defend myself? This teacher wasn't known for being overly nice to students, at least not to most students, so it made more sense in my mind to just put my head down, blink back the tears, and get through class. My mother, on the other hand, was livid. She told me that if he didn't believe me, she would have been in that school so fast with all my paperwork to prove it to him. But I told her it didn't matter. I didn't want to cause more problems or make anything weird. I already didn't like art class because art wasn't exactly my forte when it came to natural talents anyway. It was only an 8 or 9 week class before I moved on to computers or something else that would occupy my time, so I would just make my way through it. However, it's a story my mom and I still share often, and every single time that same sinking feeling in my stomach comes back. I see middle school me feeling alone and scared in a room full of my peers, wanting to disappear into thin air. It was the first time I felt ashamed of having Tourette syndrome. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I said something to him. Would he have believed me? Would he have apologized? I guess it's something that I'll never know the answer to, and maybe it's my fault, but nonetheless, it's a moment I'll take with me forever. Although that memory made me feel timid and nervous about bringing my disorder up to teachers moving forward, I didn't let it stop me. I had a mission, and I wasn't going to stop until everyone I knew, and then some, knew about this disorder and what it really was. With that being said, flash forward to my sophomore year in high school, sitting in one of my favorite teacher's English classes. On Fridays, he would time for us to write in journals for the whole period that only he would read unless we chose to share them with the class or a neighbor. This was a day where he allowed us to write about anything we wanted to tell him, so of course, I decided to take the time to tell him about Tourette syndrome. I remember opening up my red folder, staring at the paper in front of me when I decided to write about the day that I knew something was different. About the time where my body consciously made it known that my body no longer belonged to me. Giving as much detail as I could within the time limit we were given. I remember writing up until the last few minutes of class, getting up to turn it in right before the bell rang, being excited and anxious to see what he was going to say about my story after he read it. I don't remember a lot about anything he said in particular. I remember seeing the red marks in my journal and him thanking me for sharing such an intimate time in my life. But what my mother and I remember most is what came after that day. My mom received a letter in the mail about a parent-teacher conference for that class. I was always a good student and rarely had to have my parents come in for conferences, so we were both confused, and in all honesty, I'm pretty sure my mom thought about not even going to it. She knew I was doing well in the class, so she didn't understand what the teacher wanted to speak to her about, but she went anyway. The day came where she went in to talk to my teacher, and that is when she found out that Mr. S only asked her to come in so he could learn more about my disorder. He wanted to know that he was doing everything he could do to make my learning environment a safe and happy one. He didn't know a lot about my disorder, like most of my teachers before and after him, and he wanted to make sure he changed that. It was such a simple act, a simple gesture, but it meant so much to both of us. That wasn't the only reason he was one of my favorite teachers, but it certainly helped. He might not remember doing that, but I will never forget it. Those stories are important to share with everyone because they were two defining moments for me in school. That moment in middle school could have stopped me from sharing my story ever again. It could have shut me down, never feeling safe to share my true self again, but something told me not to let that moment stop me. I knew more people needed to know about this disorder. I knew that there were kids everywhere experiencing those moments daily while getting kicked out of classrooms because teachers didn't believe them. I was fighting for something bigger than myself, and I think a part of me knew that, even at a young age. When that moment came sophomore year when Mr. S showed me what it meant to be a caring teacher, he helped prove to me that being honest with myself and those around me was the right decision. He showed me that people care and how such a small, tiny gesture can be a moment that will stay with not only me, but my mother forever. If there are teachers out there reading this, I beg you, do not give up on those difficult students. I know it's not easy and you're going to want to give up, but remember that for that student, you may be all they have to succeed. Remember that one sentence and one look can stay with a student for the rest of their lives. So always make it a good one. You never know what kind of battles your students are facing that you can't always see. So that was chapter 8, the memorable teachers in my life throughout middle school and high school. The good story at the end is always one of my favorite stories to tell because he was just so kind. And he was already my favorite teacher, like I said in the chapter, but after that he shot up to definite all-time favorite teacher. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to get your own copy of Taking My Way Through Life, it is available for purchase on Amazon or online anywhere books are sold. So please remember to get your copy. Remember to rate and review it. Leave a written review. It helps authors like myself so much. You have no idea. I am hoping to get to at least 100 reviews by the end of the year. So if you have read my book already and you have not left a review, please do me the favor of leaving that review and letting us know and letting me know what you think, and don't forget to recommend it. Also, as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that way you never miss a reading or miss any of my other awareness and advocacy videos. See you guys next time.